usurped. They act when the center feels it must act. Right, Honourable Speaker, I know one of my members, my shadow minister for local government, had an issue, had a motion. I think he's still processing it, to come to the House and ask the Parliament to revisit the directive by the Minister of Finance that directed local governments to collect funds and remit to the center before expenditure, because we are aware it was a directive in utter disregard of the law, and we want Parliament to debate it. But part of what informed that directive is now the desire to re-centralize and have power controlled. The question of the day, what is the fear at the center not to allow citizens in their local enclaves to determine their fate, and that the center must at all times determine and control what they think and their aspirations? We have the regional tier in the Constitution. It suffered a stillbirth, Honourable Speaker. And we can tell the reason why. For all the pomp and pageantry at its inception, it never took off. First of all, it was some form of, I might be wrong, but it was some form of conspiracy by politicians. It was never organic, the regional tier. The politicians then wanted to settle some scores and wanted to really score political points, but never took off. So can we now rekindle a debate about devolution of powers? What about awakening the question of sharing power through some form of, you see, when you talk about the federal question, people's minds race to their smaller enclaves. The whole idea of federal is devolution. We must discuss it. I was discussing some week ago with a Kenyan friend, a senator, and they was telling me they have moved a lot. Now they're actually moving to make sure that 45% of the revenues go to the regional governments. For us, we're actually collecting even the small there is at the government towards the center. Isn't it time for us to engage in a honest discussion about devolution of powers? We are going to actually to headline proposals, Honourable Speaker, in a review, and we want Parliament to engage in this. We are going to make consultation as the opposition, and we shall engage members of Parliament to consider this. We are discussing about sharing resources and tie this arrangement in the Constitution with the formula not to have monies voted at the behest of an individual. When that individual is not happy, then of course the funds will not flow. And you have had statements, Honourable Speaker, from some politicians saying, you did not vote properly, you not get money. If you vote Mathias Mpuuga, your roads will not be constructed. Why does that happen? So we want to have this live debate about devolution of powers so that we can build an enduring and a durable democracy, right, Honourable Speaker. Of course, there's a debate, right, Honourable Speaker, as to whether the current constitution is just legitimate and lacks legitimacy. You know, when you have a constitution that's legitimate, of course, the law, the supreme law of the land, and people question its legitimacy, it's the question about whether it has that moral embrace from citizens as their consensus. Because the key contents is like a power sharing and not flimsy. They're not framed and coached in a language that undermines the power of the people when it comes to key issues like sharing resources. Honourable Speaker, we shall offer leadership on this matter because we have a fear right now that if we go by the current trends, power is reverting to the center. I have heard the president awarding contracts at press conferences. That is very scary. He's now the PPDA. So local government gets grants from the president, and there's no framework that guarantees these grants. I remember the president chiding the former president, late president, Bina Issa, as making State House a clearing house, you know. I don't want to say, I will sound derogatory, that if at this rate, State House could become a roadside market, where, transactions are keen to exchange of mokene, platters take place. So we want to align these issues, right, Honourable Speaker, and I'm tasking my team to pick these issues and begin drafting the headlines for the conversation. Right, Honourable Speaker, let's go to the next slide, and I'll be faster now. We have interest in the shape, structure, the funding of the healthcare system. I'm saying progressively we are commoditizing healthcare. It's becoming a commodity rather than a service. And I must confess that the key issues when we are discussing the National Healthcare Insurance Scheme were not considered. When you look at clearly now, you read through the major funding, the headline is that the funding will be private sector led. And this doesn't happen. Healthcare is a service. And the government must, as of necessity, be the major player. How do we, in other jurisdictions, healthcare funding by government has been capped. Can we, as Parliament, cap funding for healthcare so that we do not undermine this key service? I remember in the 9th Parliament, right, Mr. Speaker, we put our foot down at some stage when government was reluctant to fund, to give extra pay to health workers. And we had a consensus in Parliament until government climbed down and more money was voted to healthcare. We want to revisit the National Healthcare Insurance Scheme and offer caps to what government must do. We want to enhance, to make sure that there's enhancement of access and affordability. We bridge the human resource gap therein. We are aware, right, Honourable Speaker, of the thin spread of government healthcare facilities. And in some areas, the better facilities are owned by the private sector and the non-profit organizations. We're saying if you have a crisis of manpower, of human resource in the government facilities, why can't government second health workers, the private people, private institutions, and pay them from there? After all, they are providing service to the same people and there are no government facilities. But this must be housed in some legal, kind of framework. So that's not done at the, at the mass of an individual. At the height of COVID, after lengthy public altercations and discussions, the Minister of Health assured us that they have now a conversation with the private sector and they want now to be seconding health workers to the private hospitals and facilities. They should be properly housed, and we want this conversation to happen. Can we go to the next slide? Education, just like healthcare, we believe the current framework of our education system, financing and access, does not speak the same language of the NDP3 and the Vision 2040. I have a cheeky friend who said that if you look at Vision 2040 and the nature of funding to education, somebody must have added another 0 on 40 to say Vision 2400. Because the way the funding is done does not reflect a desire to achieve something in 2040. We want a debate about the capping of government funding of key education variables. Of course, the current law that was syndicated in 2008 on funding on development and allocation of education has limitations because it is open to what government can do. We want to legislate and ensure that government makes commitments by law on what it can do. Currently, government has increased funding to primary schools, grants, 10,000 per pupil, and in the secondary schools, 40,000 per pupil a whole year. If not freemasoness, then perhaps somebody who says there's another 0 on 40 could be actually right. So we have tasked our Minister for Education to look at this law. We are going to make proposals for amendment, including the funding for higher education loan scheme, make it more democratic, make it more accessible? How does it contest? How does it fare, for example, with State House scholarships? How can you have, two government programs competing, and one is only accessible by those who can access particular corridors of power and withdraw from the same resource envelope? We want these to be debated democratically by the House of Parliament, and we will make an invitation to both sides of the House to see sense in the need to democratize education, enhance access, and especially help the poor to access education. Can we proceed? Of course, part of the conversation in the education sector is closely related to the priorities in sports. You have one of the youngest populations as a country. What's the focus? Where is your bearing in ensuring that you harness this young population? Sports is one of the key areas, but we also know, right, Mr. Speaker, that one of the biggest threats to promoting sports is sports infrastructure. The emergence of arcades in most urban and peri-urban areas has wiped out sports infrastructure. But of course, you cannot blame that because the owners were private. The question of the day is, where's government? The agency called government must be the one headlining investments in sports infrastructure. We want to ask our members of parliament, when they are in budget formulation, to make sure that every budget has the tendency of prioritizing investment in sports, identify and support talent, have a legal housing for the reward system for sportsmen and women. We had a debate in Parliament, Mr. Speaker, when our gallant sons and daughters brought medals for the Olympics. And the president was so generous, he considered to offer cars and I think some envelopes. We shall not be shocked if we found those cars on the market pretty soon, because the president probably woke up so happy. That threatens the sustainability of that kind of arrangement. We want a legal housing for the reward system. In other jurisdictions, Mr. Speaker, there are laws for even those who merely participate. So you work hard to participate. You have your reward defined as an Olympian, even before a medal is won. Then the medals, they are ranked, and the reward is so ranked. At the moment, we do not know what will happen at the next Olympics, whether the president will offer choppers or will offer land. It's not sustainable. We want legal guarantees because we are here to legislate for posterity. Mr. Speaker, one of the invitations we must make, if we are going to make a difference, sports is a business, but it's a very expensive business, so government must participate. But if we are to invite the private people to participate, then we must provide incentives. We want to have a legal regime in the sports law that offers rebates to private investors in sports. If I want to put up a sports complex, I buy land and do it. Can then government offer me incentives in form of tax rebates on that investment so that I have the motivation to put resources into this? These are the kind of debates we want in sports financing going ahead, right, Mr. Speaker. And my ministers are aware of these views. They are going to pursue them in the committees. They are going to pursue them with motions and bills, right, Mr. Speaker. Can we continue? Expenditure that is regarded as nugatory in so many cases. It's the duty of Parliament to appropriate. Parliament does the checking of expenditure, provide accountability committees and other committees. We have issues of gaps in the Public Finance Management Act. They have been identified, and we are going to offer proposals by way of bills to make amendments on key components, that appropriations are tightened to remove those fissures where public funds go unchecked, yet there are other key sectors that miss out at appropriation. We have a lot of problems with supplementary requests that are unending. At the end of the day, you see, the law is very clear. You can only ask for supplementary when resources are available. But the way things are, right on the Speaker, so we have unfunded supplementaries. That's unthinkable. So it's a supplementary, but it's not, it comes and it's not funded and it passes. So how did it become a supplementary in the first place? So we need to look at these issues. And of course, when it comes to loans, a huge problem. We have underperforming loans. What was the motivation to borrow? We need to critically look at the legal regime that creates an unending appetite to borrowing, and then what we borrow is not utilized. We believe some of the borrowing could be reconsidered to take care of absorptive capacity and other possibilities. Right, Mr. Speaker, we are headlining a conversation, and we shall make an invitation for a robust debate devoid of partisan banter to allow members of parliament to scrutinize reason for borrowing, not really feel warmth about the fact that money will be available, yet absorption is very limited, Right, Mr. Speaker. Can we continue? Corruption, the fastest growing sector in this fair land. Of course, we are parliament, and it's our duty to be the firewall between public expenditure and fair utilization of public resources. We are only saying we are going to sharpen our eyes, we are going to sharpen our availability, scrutinize expenditure. As the opposition, we are the leaders of the key committees of accountability. In this, we have set ourselves targets of reporting to Parliament. Mr. Speaker, you're aware one of the key limitations to accountability is reporting. We have set ourselves targets on how to regularly report from these committees, because when reports do not come out, then we have failed in one cardinal duty. How do you ensure accountability when you have failed to bring out issues of accountability as members of Parliament? I have had meetings with my leaders of the 4 committees, and we have agreed to the reporting framework and its regularity as part of the firewall that we need to erect to curb runaway corruption. We are also making innovations. Right, Mr. Speaker, Parliament does oversight visitations to the public, but they are not structured. We want to work differently. We have conjured up what we have described as visiting the victims of corruption. For every act of corruption, there are victims. But some victims are not aware. I have had the blame game where corruption has failed government programs. Blame has been apportioned. Blame on politicians, blame on members of parliament, blame on witch doctors, blame on the rain, blame on everything, but not the corrupt. We want to engage the victims, because as we meet people who want public resources, we are able to identify the victims of corruption. We want to enhance public participation in fighting corruption by making them aware every other day what they lose when they don't stand up against corruption. Mr. Speaker, can we proceed? Fiscal reforms. The challenge, Mr. Speaker, of course, part of what explains unearning borrowing is the size of our tax to GDP ratio. But there's a question as whether our fiscal framework can facilitate a growing tax to GDP ratio. My key people on finance are already working to make very robust proposals on how we can come up with fiscal reforms that will grow the tax to GDP ratio of the country as a way of enhancing revenue availability and reducing borrowing, enhance production, facilitate job creation. We have a problem on the VAT threshold at 18%. It's long overdue for review. In other jurisdictions, it has been reviewed to facilitate consumption and grow production. Why is the Uganda review long overdue? We are going to offer leadership, right, Honourable Speaker. We shall explain our reasons and shall offer the pathway on how this can be done. Of course, the debate on VAT on key services has been here with us. And we would like, this time around, Parliament to pronounce itself. In the Parliament, we removed the VAT on water. As we speak, it is back. What happened? Then, because eventually, Honourable Speaker, the taxes on these key services later on translate into other sectoral afflictions. You tax water, then you grow waterborne diseases, then you spend on health. So are we being smart? We shall offer solutions, and we shall ask of the other side of the house on your right to listen and participate in this conversation. Of course, incentivizing local producers as part of growing production and creating jobs is a key invitation to the opposition, and we have solutions being thought through for presentation to Parliament and debate by the public. Can we continue? Right, Honourable Speaker, there is a debate that is on and off and is inconclusive about indigenous capital growth. Yesterday's papers, if I've not forgotten, carried a big scare, I think it was the Daily Monitor, about the central bank raising the capital requirement for commercial banks. And of course, the biggest threat is on the locally owned banks. Have we elected to surrender the economy to other people? I'll not call them foreigners, other people, other players. So how do we support indigenous capital growth? Of course, we are the House of Parliament. We must evolve legislation that will buttress the capacity, the growth, and sustainability of the local people. We are proposing a review of the investment code. The 10th Parliament did some review. Our sense is that they were inconclusive. We need to revisit them. There's no legal bar to revisiting a law that was passed 3 years ago. We intend to revisit this and offer more support to local initiative that we can sustainably support and grow our economy and support the local people that have the initiative. One of the challenges, Honourable Speaker, I was looking at, for example, the USMID project funded by the World Bank to finance infrastructure in the 10 original municipalities, including my own. But if you look at the monies in billions voted on this project, there are no local players. All the contractors are foreign. So what happened? There's a problem here. There's something we're doing wrong, and we're incapacitating our own. And before we know it, we shall be under capture. So how do we free local initiative? We need to have robust legislation that can support the local initiative, the local people to be creative, because they are more reliable. Their investments should be more enduring and more predictable because they are citizens. We need to support them by housing legislation that will offer these possibilities. Media and communication, Honourable Speaker. Of course, we have our eyes on reviewing the Uganda Communications Act 2013. I remember there was an outcry from media practitioners that the law was made by politicians, to facilitate their frustrations and ambitions over the day. It was never consultative. We have educated ourselves on these challenges, and we are going to come up with proposals. Under the current law, we have a regulator who is an eternal complainant. He is the complainant, he is the judge, and at will, he takes arbitrary decisions. We want to legislate against this arbitrariness under the current law so that we can promote community broadcasting and also reduce the digital divide in our communities. I'll use the next 5 minutes and take leave. We have our eyes on the employment laws, right, Honourable Speaker. so that we take care of the emerging challenges when companies restructure, when companies, for example, there's a debate on the merger of government agencies, and already in the committees where the speaker sent these conversations, the debate is emerging about employees that have been not taken care of by the merger, debate. So we need to have these properly housed. Trade Unions Act, we have eyes on it. Under the current law, when you're in a trade union, you're not supposed to associate with political parties. Then that again is the spirit of the Constitution, freedom of association. Hitherto, trade unions and cooperative societies incubated and grew leaders. When they collapsed, I will not speak about the product of politicians now, but we know the difference between the crop and caliber of political leaders that were incubated from these arrangements. We think it's irregular, it's unconstitutional to lock out particular sections of society from participating in the affairs of this country. But we have made and erected proposals that we need to be debated. Proceed. The environment, enforcement, and audit. Who are the people that have raised down the entire vegetational cover of this country? Are they politicians? Are they witch doctors? Are they medicine men and women? We need an audit of forests and wetlands, but need the legal framework to undertake that audit, as well as the mineral licensing regime that was undertaken in 2000. It has gaps. We're proposing reviews on it. We want them to be debated. And with a view of re-empowering people that are within regions that have mineral wealth. The problems in Mubende are alive with us. The problems in Karamoja and other places are alive with us. Our people need to be supported to benefit from the country's mineral wealth. Close to an end, fisheries. The debate in the fisheries sector is in Parliament, right, Honourable Speaker. The problems that are awash. Can we demilitarize the sector? Can it comply to sustainability? Can we enhance community involvement and benefit? What is happening to the people that are being displaced? The communities that have only known fishing as their source of bread and butter. What's happened to them when the military, on whose behalf is the military working on so many learning sites, displacing communities and killing citizens in the name of protecting fisheries? But we know there are legal gaps who want to be addressed, Right Honourable Speaker. Right Honourable Speaker, we are doing this in the spirit of accountability and service. And as the opposition, it's a shared struggle. The array of honourable men and gentlemen here, Right Honourable Speaker, are a representation of the desire by the alternative to work different, so that we can win back the trust of the people, the confidence, the possibilities ahead, and enjoying the rest of Parliament to think about us not as a group of political wannabes, but as a group of people capable of making the difference, but we need an opportunity and a platform. And the Speaker with us here, this is your conversation. We are alive to what you have so far shared with the Parliament. These members here, Right Honourable Speaker, and those represented, are willing to be part of the platform to join you in shaping the role, the duty of Parliament in enhancing national cohesion, growth, and political durability. I thank you so much for governing my country.
I think Ugandans are very conservative when it comes to clapping. I think that deserved a much better applause than that. Thank you very much. I think the leader of the opposition has been extremely candid and raised several topical areas that will be the focus of discussion going forward. Now, even as the Right Honourable Speaker collects his thoughts, with your indulgence, Mr. Speaker, we have always had a tradition in Parliament that we have a minute or two to stretch in the middle of activities. This is in regard to our health and also in support of sports. Now, Coach Bob is in our midst here. He would have wanted much more time, but I've only given him 1 minute. 1 minute to kindly come and help us with our stretches before we can hear the thoughts of the Right Honourable Speaker. Thank you, Coach.
May we please stand up? Hands up. Maximize time. Physical activity is a responsibility for all of us human beings. We go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. And we clap. One, two, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. You got to take 1 second.
And
2, 3, 4,
9 and 10.
6. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Coach. Now, it gives me great honor to invite the Right Honourable Speaker to kindly come and share his thoughts.
Can we sanitize that so they can see through? Sanitize it. Mike, want to speak without a mic?
Right?
Good morning. I've requested that this whole thing be sanitized so that I can speak without a mask. Is that okay? So please keep your masks on so that I'm under no threat, especially the Honorable Basalu. Thank you. Honorable members, it gives me enormous pleasure to stand before you as the opposition in Parliament and go through with you your thoughts in how we shape the agenda of this country to make it focus better on the national interest, better service delivery. And as I keep saying, the president, I said, will be using the parish model. To what extent does it work in our favor? And when I say in our favor, I mean in favor of the people who sent us here. The leader of the opposition, I thank you for inviting me. You have this bad habit of giving me really short notice, and sometimes I find it conflicting with my other programs. But respecting you, I always bend my program, but it should not become a habit, because next time I'm going to refuse. He only told me yesterday in the afternoon. How kind is that? The leaders of the parties here, I see all the big people here. I even see Honorable Bill of UPC. I see all the leaders of the political parties that are represented in Parliament. But if you look at the arrangement of flags there, it starts with Uganda. And that is significant. It's symbolic. Starts with Uganda. And Uganda means its peoples. And that's our focus as a parliament. The subsequent lining up of the flags is secondary. It's not first. It follows from the flag of Uganda, not any other flag. That means we have a duty and an obligation to our country and our people. I see the Lord Mayor. I am trying to memorize a word that he has created that has become so popular, Mpuuga. The Honorable Mpuuga is so fond of these quips. I'm not talking about the other ones, which make people laugh sometimes when they are held badly. Honorable members, let's keep our eyes on the ball. And what is the ball is this country and its peoples. The ball is not the regime. A focus on the regime is a narrow focus, it's a wrong focus. The focus must be on the country and the people. Regime change is different from country destruction. Those two are very different. Regime and country are different. Let's focus on country. The constitutions give us the avenue of regime change. Every 5 years we try and fail, we try and fail. And the only reason you are in the opposition is because at the time of elections you didn't have the numbers. So you spend the next 5 years slowly, strategically, building those numbers that you have never had in the last elections. And you cannot build these numbers by chaos. You build these numbers by using your power of persuasion, not the persuasion of power. It's a duty. It's a strategic obligation on the opposition to make sure this happens. Build the numbers gradually. You have 5 years, a month, another month, building numbers slowly. When the next time elections come, we have no challenge. I had a conversation with the Right Honorable Raila Odinga in 2001 at Sabasaba Hotel in Arusha. We sat with him, was with his brother Buru. At that time, he had just joined Kanu of Moi. And all of you remember that Moi had imprisoned him for 7 years. I asked him, what madness is this? Did you have to join Kanu? He kept quiet.
omuzadde ng'oteekateeka okunoonyeza omwana w'essomero ery'okumubangula mu bintu eby'enjawulo omuli ebyenjigiriza eby'omulembe n'okufuna amagezi ku bintu eby'emikono, essomero liri limu lyokka, Janan Nursery and Primary School erisangibwa ebbombo Kalule. Ffe tulina omusingi gw'ebyenjigiriza ebisookerwako nga tusomesa abaana okuviira ddala ku mutendero gwa kindagate okutuuka ku kibiina eky'omusanvu. Tulina abasomesa abakugu mu kubangula abaana n'okubateekateeka. Ebibiina abaana mwe basomera eby'omulembe omuli buli kimu ekikwata ku ebyo bye basoma, ebisuula ebyazimbibwa obulungi, ebigazi ate nga biyonjo, kompawundi yaffe nga zibulungi, nga n'endabika yayo eyamba omwana okulowooza ku ebyo by'asoma. Abayizi baffe bafuna akadde ak'okusinza mu madiini gaabwe ag'enjawulo. Wano ku Janan ebyokwerinda tuyitwala nga kikulu, anti tulina security camera ezisangibwa mu buli kasonda k'essomero. Abayizi baffe baweebwa omukisa okwetaba mu by'emizannyo eby'enjawulo omuli okuwuga, okusamba omupiira, basketball n'okuzannya netball. Tufaayo ku by'obulamu nga tulina eddwaliro erikola okumala essaawa 24. Endiisa y'abaana ezimba emibiri gyabwe n'okubakuma nga balamu. Kati nno gwe omuzadde ekirabo ky'oyinza okwasa omwana wo mu lusoma lw'omwaka 2020 muleete ku Janan Nursery and Primary erisangibwa ebbombo Kalule, nga n'okwewandiisa kugenda maaso kati eri abaana ab'ekibiina ekisooka. Okumanya ebisingawo tukubire ku nnamba z'essimu ez'owammanga.
Introducing AfriCell Sabura Bundle. Dial star 134 hash. Pick a bundle for as low as 5,000 shillings and get 1 GB, 25 minutes to call other networks and 25 minutes for AfriCell calls. Don't just load bundle for Sabura Bundle. AfriCell, connecting communities. AfriCell is regulated by Ghana Communications Commission.
Omutandisi w'amasomero ga Janan Schools ate nga nze ssentebe w'abatandisi b'amasomero ag'obwannannyini mu Uganda PIAO. Ndi wano okukubiriza nti ekiseera kya kubeera nti omusomesa wamu n'abakola mu masomero omwo mwe muli babbaasa, basecretary, abasirikale, abacleaners wamu n'abafumbi mugende babagemese okutandula n'ennaku z'omwezi zino 25 paka n'ennaku z'omwezi 28. Omukisa gutuweereddwa ffe abakola mu masomero wamu n'abasomesa okuba nga batugema sobole okubeera nga okusoma abaana bakomawo mu ssomero nga tuli balamu. So gwe ng'omusomesa oweereddwa omukisa ogende bakugeme osobola okutaasa omulimu gwo wamu n'okutaasa abayizi. Ate n'ekirala abayizi abawezezza emyaka 18 tusaba abazadde abaana abo mubatwale babageme kubanga batuuse okugemebwa ng'amateeka bwe galagira. Gwe omusomesa ki ekyetaagisa okugenda okukugema? Tukusaba ogende ne ID yo ey'essomero wamu ne ID yo eya ndagamuntu oba eba namba gye bayita nino namba bagyetaaga okuba nga ogenda nabyo gye bagemesiza. Ate wajja olina okulaga mu Kampala wano centers bazikoze buli division erina amasomero 2 buuza gye bagenda okugemeseza abasomesa bajja kukulagirira. Ebweru wa Kampala mu district ag'ebweru n'ewalala genda bugenzi wa DEO bakuba essimu wa DEO akulagirira essomero kiri bataddeko center yammwe y'okugemebwako. Mwenna mugende obutasigalayo tutaase abaana baffe n'eggwanga lyaffe.
Provost Waltiko ya St. Paul's Cathedral ekako wamu n'omuwandiisi wa West Buganda Diocese bategeeza abantu ba Katonda mwenna nti omulabirizi wa West Buganda Diocese kitaffe mu Katonda Henry Katumba Tamale ng'aweza emyaka 5 bukyangaatuzibwa ng'omulabirizi wajja kubaawo omukolo gw'okwebaza Katonda ng'ennaku z'omwezi 29 omwezi guno ogw'omunaana awo ku Lukiiko ya St. Paul's Cathedral ekako okutandika ku ssaawa 5 ez'okumakya era ng'olw'okugoberera ebiragiro ebitangira okusaasanya COVID-19 omukolo gujja kujaguzibwa mu ngeri ya saayansi era nga gujja kulagibwa buterebwano ku BBS Telefina wokka. Twegatteko okwebaza Katonda olw'obuweereza bwa Bishop Henry Katumba Tamale ng'aweza emyaka 5 bukyangaatuzibwa.
wewa buterevu oli ku BBS telefayina yaffe ey'obwakabaka bwa Buganda enteekateeka z'abannaffe abali ku luuyi oluvuganya gavumenti nga balina kutegeezezza nga tutandika nti oludda oluvuganya gavumenti alulina obuvunaanyizibwa bw'amaanyi era mu nteekateeka eyo babaako ne baleeta alternative ebiyinza okuba nga bigobererwa okusinziira ku mwogezi asoose nga leader of opposition adannyonnyola enteekateeka zaabwe ze balina naye mu ngeri y'emu ate era ku ssaawa eno tulina Speaker Parliament nga naye agenda maaso n'okwogerako eri abakuŋŋaanye njagala tusooke tumufune era tujja kwongera okuwa bingi ebigenda mu maaso naye njagala okutegeeza nti essaawa zino twandibadde tulolokera genda mu kalaakya naye akalaakya tekagenda kubeerayo olw'ensonga nti tukyalina bingi bye tugenda okuba nga tukutuusaako kkiriza tukutwale mu Parliament ate ogoberere nga mukadde waffe Speaker wa Parliament era agenda maaso n'okwogerako eri abo bonna abakuŋŋaanye abali ku ludda oluvuganya gavumenti.
As a parliament and as political parties and as leaders, I will re-echo to you word of an author whose identity I have not been able to establish. Must be from Russia. And he said this: we don't mind what turn history will make, but will not allow history to make any turn without our participation. We don't mind what turn history will make, but we will not allow history to make any turn without our participation. The question is, what kind of participation? The question is, what kind of energy do you put in this participation to influence the course of history? I suppose it is positive energy. I believe it is positive energy. I invite you, honorable members, to deploy positive energy while we engage in these things that affect our people. Let's stop pulling. Let's start pushing gently until we achieve for our people what they deserve. The leader of the opposition talked about cooperation. Was it the leader of the opposition or the whip? About the things in heaven and hell. I hope you have not been in any of them. Because you told the story as if you are an eyewitness. As a cooperative, I studied cooperatives. The symbolism was of two goats that were tied in one rope. One neck tied, the other goat's neck tied, one rope. At the beginning, the goats pulled the ropes. This one wants to eat that part of the grass, this one wanting to eat the other. So they pulled and pulled and pulled. And the grass that was just near them, because of the pulling, they destroyed. Then I think one of the goats became wise. I said, but why don't we go and first eat the other one, then eat the other one, then eat the other one? So they now collapsed the rope, stood together, moved and started eating, and they enjoyed, and they grew fat, like those ones who were putting 4-meter spoons, as if that's impossible, in the mouth of the other. There's a widening gap between legislatures and the people. Our duty is to bridge that gap. The bridge has decayed. The nails have collapsed. The concrete has dissolved. It is our responsibility as leaders of this time, parliamentarians of this time, without any shade of color, to start this reconstruction of this bridge building between parliament and the people. And that is the call I made to you all when I said, I want to be what I am now, and thank God you supported me to be there. Let's build these bridges. Let's help our people. Okay, the Wagava bill, devolution of power, the size of parliament, I think we have spoken about this. Issue of regional tier, I was the chair of the legal committee then when we discussed this. It was not so much what the leader of the opposition said. The proposal was to come somewhere in the middle, make concessions, because there were pressures from all the leaders. We want this, we want this. So what's the middle ground? Let's create regional governments. It was kind of a compromise based on historical things. I was chairing the legal committee then. I met leaders from the kingdom. We had very good discussions. At the day I was presenting my report on those issues, 2 elders were brought elders from Buganda, and they said they had sworn never to cut their beards until Federo was returned in Uganda. These are heavily emotional things. We should not just discuss them in passing. But what is the essence of federation? Different kinds. We have many federal governments, but how did they come in place? There are different types of how you get a federation in place. There's what they call coming together federation. We are federating units voluntarily. Say, divided, we're weaker, let's come together and form a federal government. They call it the coming together federation. There's the bringing together federation. Where things force people to federate, or whether by law or by other things. If you want me to give a lecture on this on another day, I'll do it. Right now, I don't have the time. Because sometimes we talk about things we hardly know. But because they are popular, we also join and say, oh. But you don't know it. I like all the other 12 heads you have posed in the discussions that you intend to bring to Parliament. I had mention of State House scholarship. To my knowledge, this has been abolished. And to date, no money has been assigned to it. It has moved now to what they call students' loan scheme. There's no more State House scholarship to my knowledge. Reviewing legislation is part of what we must do, because we'll discuss this another day. There is pre-legislative scrutiny when a bill is brought, like they are going to be brought, and we are going to examine them, asking questions about their fitness for purpose, checking how they affect people's rights and all the other things. Then we take a decision on what we must remove and what we must retain, or what we must add to make the law work. But when that law is passed and is being implemented, as a house, we have a duty to carry out what we call post-legislative scrutiny. How is it working? Is it working according to the frameworks we agreed? Are there diversions? And this is where I support benchmarking. You passed a law, it's in implementation, it's having issues. Similar laws have been passed in other countries. How did they do it? Why is theirs working and ours not working? You come back as a parliament, you look at the frameworks you have, and you say, no, there's a problem here. You review the law. So the leader of opposition, you're right on point to say there must be post-legislative scrutiny, and I support you on that. I support this way and method of work. And let me tell you, it's the first time. That means we have looked at all other ways of doing things. They have not really worked, because essentially what works is what counts. This is going to work, Right Honorable. And that's why never come to me to ask for support. I already have it. Just ask me what to do, and we'll jointly do it. With these few words, this meeting is open. God bless you.
Like I said, as Ugandans, please clap. I think there has been an immense amount of wisdom dispensed today, and I may not be the right person to thank you, Mr. Speaker, but I also know I will not water down anything that has been said, but the Speaker has been very clear when he says the leader of the opposition has got his full support. So that is something that we shall keep in mind. Now, I'm sure all of you know, with great sadness, that one of the gallant sons of Uganda is being laid to rest today. And the Right Honourable Speaker is expected to be there. And that is the reason why he will not be with us throughout the rest of our discussion. However, this being a unique occasion as it is, with your indulgence, Mr. Speaker, I would like to invite the leaders of the political parties, the whips, the mayor, to come and join the Right Honourable Speaker in a group photograph on the steps of Parliament, at which juncture we shall allow the Right Honourable Speaker to take his leave. But just before we do that, can we give him another round of applause for his words of wisdom? So without any further ado, I will kindly ask that we rise to our feet. And the persons that have been invited, the whips of the parties, the party leaders, the Lord Mayor, I'm sure this will be a full representation of our team here. Now, in the spirit of winding down the presence of the Right Honourable Speaker, but not the function, I will kindly ask that we sing one stanza of the East African anthem and one stanza of the Uganda anthem to see him off. And just to re-emphasize, immediately after everybody else, we shall continue with this function. So as we take the group photograph, we shall invite you to get a cup of tea at the back, and we shall continue with the function shortly after. And we would like to thank especially the television stations that are relaying this live. Mr. Speaker, this is live on NBS television, and it's also live on BBS Telefaina. So we thank you for continuing to broadcast what we have here today. So the East African anthem, please. E Mungu twaomba uilinde Jumuiya Afrika Mashariki, tuwezeshe kuishi kwa amani, tutimize na malengo yetu. Jumuiya yetu sote tuilinde, tuwajibike, tuimarike. Umoja wetu ni nguzo yetu, idumu jumuiya. O Uganda, may God uphold thee. We lay our future in thy hand. United, free for liberty, together we'll So please remain standing as we see of the Right Honourable Speaker. So could the teams that were identified please join the Right Honourable Speaker for a photograph on the steps of Parliament.
Weewaawo omulabi wa BBS telefayina yaffe ey'obwakabaka bwa Buganda ku ssaawa eno kyolaba ku telefayina yo gwe mukolo gw'abannaffe abali ku ludda oluvuganya gavumenti nga babadde bali mu Parliament bagenda okubaganya ebirowoozo ku nsonga ez'enjawulo naddala bagenda okutambuzaamu emirimu ate ne agenda yaabwe enkulu gye bagenda okuba nga bakulembeza nga baddukanya omulimu gwabwe ogwa Parliament. Mu kwogera kwasoseewo twabadde ne Leader of Opposition Oweekitiibwa Mathias Mpuuga era n'abaako ensonga ez'enjawulo z'atunulira oba oliawo ebirumira bingi byalaba mu gavumenti ate n'engeri ez'enjawulo ye zaalaba nti bwali badde bazikwata bwe batyo nesobola okulaba nti eggwanga lyaffe tubaako kye tufunamu ate oba oliawo ebintu ne bitambula bulungi naye bw'amaliriza okwogera omugenyi omukulu gwe bayise ye sipiika wa Parliament. Jjukira nti emirimu gyabwe egya Parliament era sipiika yabatwala mu ngeri y'emu ye mukama waabwe babeera mu Parliament wadde oludda oluvuganya luweebwa omukisa okulonda shadow cabinet naye mu nteekateeka eyo era sipiika asigala nga ye mukulu ayogeddeko gye bali ye n'abawa naye endowooza ye oba oliawo ng'aggulawo nteekateeka y'olunaku olwaleero naye olwakadde jjukira nti waliwo okuziika mukadde waffe Rukech era agenda kakati ku ssaawa eno bagenze kuba nti beekubisa ku bifaananyi ate alyoke ye asimbule bo bagenda kudda okwongera okubaako ensonga ze bakubaganyaako ebirowoozo bintu bingi. Mathias Mpuuga bye yatunuulidde okuli enkola za gavumenti ezitavuddemu mulamwa okusinziira ku ye okuli enkola ya decentralization ate eganya okukola nga abantu abo abali eri boyinza okugamba nti ku districts tebalina maanyi ate era n'ensimbi ze bakuŋŋaanya zigenda bugenzi mu central government nti kimu kiri eno ku central government ate eri wansi tebituukayo ngagamba nti oba oliawo enkola zino ez'enjawulo zirina okutunulirwa n'eriise George oba oliawo okulaba nti wanaabaawo omulamwa oguvaamu. Olunaku olwaleero bano abaka ba Parliament naddala abali ku ludda oluvuganya gavumenti abalina bingi bye bagenda okutunulira n'okwegeyaamu ate n'okulaba enkola yaabwe bwegenda okutambula nga bali mu Parliament era y'emu ku nsonga enkulu ebakuŋŋaanyisizza olunaku olwaleero. Cabinet bagironda era mu kulonda cabinet nga mukadde waffe Mathias Mpuuga yagenda maaso n'okuba nga ye Leader of Opposition ate mu ngeri y'emu ne balonda John Baptist Nyambeshe oyo nno nga ye Chief Whip bw'oba tutunuulira banaffe aba kibiina ekisinga kati ate ekisinga okubeera n'abaka mu Parliament ekya Nuupu bonna abo era mwe bava mu ngeri y'emu ne balonda Deputy ate era Chief Whip nga ye erinnya lye ezibu nnyo okwatula Kyabakutika ye mu deputy atwala ensonga ezo ate ne balonda Winfred Nwagaba oyo nno nga ye Attorney General kosa owa cooperatives ne microfinance nga Honorable Adeke Baju era bw'otunya cabinet yaabwe ey'abanaffe abali ku ludda oluvuganya gavumenti bagiyita shadow cabinet ne balonda Minister wa Presidency ne Security balonda Derek Nyeko ate era mu ngeri y'emu ne wa Animal Industry and Fisheries ne balonda Charles Tebandeke w'Ekayunga Nyeko wa wano mu Makindye East ate mu ngeri y'emu ne local government ne balonda Betty Narima oyo mubaka akiikira abakyala mu Wakiso district ate era mu ngeri y'emu ne balonda wa munafe owa finance ne housing ne balonda mu Wanga Kivumbi abadde ku bukiiko obwa Parliament obuwerako obutunulira ensimbi ate era kusinziira ku kisanja ekiwedde abaddeko ne ku nsonga za defense ne internal affairs ku mulundi guno bamuteeka mu finance okutunulira ensonga nga bwe zitambula ate mu ngeri y'emu ne babako wa human rights era balonda Honorable Anifa Nabukeera ate owa foreign affairs muwadda nkunyingi mu ngeri y'emu ne balonda owa ebyobulamu Honorable Batuwa ava mu bitundu biri ebya Busoga ate ne balonda obyenjigiriza nga Brenda Nabukenya ava mu bitundu bino ebya Luweero. Mu ngeri y'emu ne bagenda maaso ne balonda ate omukulu avunanyizibwa ku nsonga z'abakozi gender labor n'ebirala balonda Fortune Nantongo oyo ava mu bitundu biri by'abanaffe Gweta Masaka naye era adda mu kifo kya maama we ate yali mu saidi ze za Kyotera ate era ne bagenda maaso balonda w'abavubuka Kabuye ava Kasanda saidi eyo era nga ali mu NUP yagenda maaso n'okuba nti alondebwa okubeera ntwala ensonga z'abavubuka ate owa Wax ne Transport ali wano mu Mawokota ye Yusufu Nsibambi ng'ava mu kibiina ekya FDC okonokosa n'owa information balonda w'Emityana mukyala akiikirira disitulikiti y'Emityana Ntwantwa yagenda mu maaso Joyce Baagala Ntwatwa nga yatwala ekitundu ekyo kya Mityana mu bakyala era gwe balonda okuba nga abeera owa information ate era mu ngeri emu owa housing ne balonda Ronald bali mwezo engineer ava wano mu bitundu eby'Nakawa era gwe bakwasa omulimu ogwo ate mu ngeri emu ne balonda n'avunaanyizibwa ku tourism ne wildlife ate nga mbaka Masaaba naye mu mbeera eno ababaka bano aba parliament baweebwa obuvunaanyizibwa era weewaawo baweebwa n'ensimbi ez'okugenda maaso n'okukola omulimu gw'okulaba nga bateesa naye batunuulira ministries abwezi ez'enjawulo ne babaako bye baziwabula okulaba nti obaolyawo ministry zitambulira mu kkubo egolokofu mu kkubo etuufu era ebiseera ebisinga obungi naddala honorable Namboozi oyo bwe yali minister wa local government ndowooza ne KCC era agitwalira yawandiika nnyo ebiwandiiko bingi ng'agenda maaso n'okulambika ministry ezo ministry eyo nga bwe yali ebitatambulanga bulungi nga yaawa endowooza ye ng'agamba nti nedda kino kirina okuba nga kikolebwa nga balonda ababaka bano bantu bangi bavaayo n'ebirowoozo oba olyawo n'okubakubaganyako ebirowoozo si kinoomu nti ono gwe balonze oba olyawo tagwanidde waliwo n'oluvuvumu olwali luva mu FDC n'ebiina ebirala nga bagamba nti fe abaffe be balonze tetunnabakkiriza kukolagana butereevu nabo naye oluvannyuma wabaawo okukkiriziganya oba olyawo ogenda okulaba nga baasigala mu bifo byabwe wadde nga bava mu bibiina bya njawulo bagezaako okulonda mu bibiina eby'enjawulo okugjayo abakulu abasobola butereevu okuba ng'ate babeera mu nteekateeka eno era ne baweebwa ebifo okuweereza abantu bangi beebuuza banaasobola okuweereza era nekibuuzo kirala kivaayo abannayuganda kye bayinza okwebuuza nti naddala ababaka bano abava ku ddoboganya gavumenti bwe babeera mu shadow cabinet bakola ki oba olyawo banaabo aba-NRM bavuddeyo nnyo nga babalumiriza nti shadow cabinet eweebwa ssente okukola emirimu naye performance ebeera etya ndowooza olunaku olwaleero naddala ku agenda gye bagenze maaso n'okuba nti bagenda kuggulawo ate n'ebiteeso ebyenjawulo ebigenda okuva mu kuteesa kwabwe kwe bagenda okuba nga abatuwa olunaku olwaleero tusuubira bingi oba olyawo tunalabawo enjawulo mu performance mu kukola n'okugenda maaso n'okutuusa ku bannayuganda obuweereza naddala nga bakola omulimu ogwo mutuufu ogubaweebwa nga naddala nti kasita obeera ng'okkiriza nti yes ndi opposition era ne bakulonda nti ministry eno gogenda okugitwala abannayuganda bakusuubira okuba n'alternative bweba nga tatambula bulungi gwe olina ki ekyenjawulo tugenda kuwumulamu ninga bwe tudda tukyali ku BBS Fine yaffe era nga tutunula ebigenda maaso mu ggwanga tuli ku parliament naddala oludda oluvuganya gavumenti nze Maurice Mukiibi omugave.
bw'oyogera nyaffe Uganda Ekkula lya Africa tolemwa kumwenya olw'akamwenyumwenyu akajjudde abanywanyi. Embeera y'obudde yatukolako mukwano n'obutonde obutubeezaawo ne butusobozesa buli omu okubeerawo mu ngeri ye kuba ffenna tuli banjawulo ne mu ngeri gye tukwasaganyamu emirimu gyaffe naye ekitugatta ne tufuuka omuntu omu bwe bwomi obuva mu kyokunywa ekya Hallelujah Jingatte drink ne Hallelujah Tamarind drink eddekende erikumala ennyonta ate nga wejjanjaba omubiri gwo. Ekyokunywa kino kye kitegeera emibiri gyaffe kuba kya butonde 100 ku 100. Woomerwa ekyokunywa kirimu omubisi gw'enkooge Hallelujah Tamarind drink ne Hallelujah Jingatte drink bikolebwa ba Hallelujah Reflexology Healthy Solution and Nutritional Research Center Limited. Weefunira ekyokunywa kya Hallelujah leero okuva ku maduuka wonna bakubire ku noti 393 24 15 6
Want a kick-ass game? Have a good night's sleep. Get brand new Always Dreams with a wider back and leak guard channels that lock liquid no matter how you move.
A good night's rest, a kick-ass game.
Introducing AfriCell Sabuda Bando. Dial *134#. Pick a bundle for as low as 5,000 shillings and get 1 GB, 25 minutes to call other networks and 25 minutes for AfriCell calls. Don't just load Bando for Sabuda Bando. AfriCell, connecting communities. AfriCell is regulated by Ghana Communications Commission.
Uganda kombucha drink kyekyo kunywa abantu kye bayayanira ensanju zino ate nga kisangibwa mu matundiro wonna mu ggwanga. Uganda kombucha drink.
Semaduka eyomulembe eyitibwa Fabulous Freeman Hypermarket ekuletedde ebintu ebyomulembe byobadde tonnaba kusanga wantu wonna mu kibuga Kampala ate nga bya bbeeyi esobolwa buli muntu. Mulimu ebikozesebwa awaka mu ffumbiro omuli blenders, rice cookers, amasepiki ag'omulembe n'ebyuma ebibugumya emmere biyite warmers. Tufumba emmere ebeera ever ready n'ebyokulya ebya buli ngeri. Tutunda ebikozesebwa mu masomero n'ezi office, eby'amasannyalaze, perfumes ez'ebika byonna ate nga za mulembe, eby'abaana ne kalonda omulala mungi okuva mu nsi ezisinga okukola ebintu ebirungi. Tutuukirire leero ofune ekyenjawulo ky'obadde tonnasanga wantu wonna mu Kampala. Fabulous Freeman Hypermarket, Namirembe Road ku mwaliro ogwokubiri. Balina n'obuwunguzi okukwanguyiza embeera. Okumanya ebisingawo kuba ku ssimu eno not 7 not M not 5 34 86.
Okuva BBS Telefina lwe yakuleetera ebifo mu katale eno kati ye mboozi gy'otasaanidde kunyumizibwa.
Bannange mbaagala nnyo.
Tuli mu katale Kibuye, tuli mu katale Mengo, bande tulinamu entonotono Ekatwe, tuli mu katale Kasubi.
Kubanga okuva lwe twatandika okutabala obutale obw'enjawulo abantu bangi basobodde okutuusa ebirowoozo byabwe eri eggwanga.
Bitambula bitya waneeno?
Nze nsinga baba. Babadde ki? Amatooke, muceere, kawunga, sujji, jjuuni, lumonde.
Mu katale wane Wandegeya.
Ese ndiso singa ohunyiye emmere ng'oma.
Tuli mu kunana.
N'olwekyo buli katale konna bwe kali mu nsonda y'eggwanga tugenda kubatukako essaawa yonna tunyumyemu nammwe mutubuulire ebifa mu katale ko era mwewangulire n'ebirabo eby'enjawulo bye tunaaba tuyise nabyo. Ebifa mu katale biwagiddwa bannaffe aba Rexba, KCCA,
BBS Telefina. MTN ekwebaza nti thank you olw'okutulonda mu bangi tweyama okubaweereza emyaka mingi egijja mu maaso nga tuli ffenna. Thank you.
Erigwe wennanyumirwa ebyobuwangwa wamu n'ebyafaayo by'Abakoreya. BBS Telefina ngeri wamu n'ekitebe ekikulu ekya Korea wano mu Uganda bagenda kutuusako okuvuganya okwetabiddwamu okuyita ku mutimbagano mu bitone eby'enjawulo ebyayoleseddwa mu byobuwangwa obw'Abakoreya. Omwabadde K-pop nga bavuganya bayimba ennyimba ez'Abakoreya, okuvuganya okwa Ponsia mu nnwana eza Taekwondo, okwetaba mu kazannya ka quiz nga babuuzibwa ku bikwata ku ggwanga erya Korea, okwogera olulimi Olukoreya wamu n'okuwandikako ebyo by'omanyi ku ggwanga erya Korea.
안녕하세요. 제 이름은 제니파입니다.
우리는 M27입니다. 감사합니다.
Era nga bino bigenda kulagibwa ku Lwokusatu ng'ennaku z'omwezi 18 wamu n'ennaku z'omwezi 25 biddibwemu ng'ennaku z'omwezi 2 wamu n'ennaku z'omwezi 27 omwezi ogw'omunaana olwo ate mu mwezi ogw'omwenda biragibwe ng'ennaku z'omwezi 1 ssaako n'ennaku z'omwezi 8 nga na bino bijja kuddibwamu ng'ennaku z'omwezi 3 wamu n'ennaku z'omwezi 10 era nga bino byonna bijja kulagibwa ku ssaawa 12 n'eddakiika 45 ez'akawungeezi ssaako ne mu mawulire gaffe agezigika butereevu ku BBS Telefina wokka.
Buli muntu ayogera naye ebigambo ebimu bwe mubumbira n'ogw'emirembe eddembe n'enkulaakulana.
Okusobola okuzimba eggwanga ery'omu maaso tulina okufaayo ennyo ku mutindo gw'ebyenjigiriza.
Tulwanyise nnyo obwavu, tulwanyise endwadde, tusobole okutuukiriza ebiruubirirwa byaffe.
Ssaabasajja Kabaka buli lwasiima n'alabikako eri Obuganda abasibirira entanda ennamu era eno ye nnamuziga okwetooloolera enkulaakulana y'Obwakabaka.
Tubakubiriza okwongera okwerinda siriimu, okwekebeza awamu n'okwejjanjabisa singa osangibwa ng'oli mulwadde.
Era mu buufu obwo empologoma mweramulidde Obuganda. Kale tosubwa obuufu bwengo buli lunaku ku terefayinayo ng'atwolekera amawulire ageesigika.
Provost Waltiko ya St. Paul's Cathedral ekako wamu n'omuwandiisi wa West Buganda Diocese bategeeza abantu ba Katonda mwenna nti omulabirizi wa West Buganda Diocese kitaffe mu Katonda Henry Katumba Tamale ng'aweza emyaka 5 bukyangatuuzibwa ng'omulabirizi wajja kubaawo omukolo gw'okwebaza Katonda ng'ennaku z'omwezi 29 omwezi guno ogw'omunaana awo ku Lutiko ya St. Paul's Cathedral ekako okutandika ku ssaawa 5 ez'okumakya era ng'olw'okugoberera ebiragiro ebitangira okusaasaanya COVID-19 omukolo gujja kujaguzibwa mu ngeri ya saayansi era nga gujja kulagibwa buterevu ku BBS Terefayina wokka. Twegatteko okwebaza Katonda olw'obuweereza bwa Bishop Henry Katumba Tamale ng'aweza emyaka 5 bukyanga atuuzibwa.